Hey, this is Jamie from Stonemaier Games, and today I'm going to talk about my top 10 favorite trick-taking and ladder-climbing games. I put these in the same category because they're pretty similar, but they are two different categories. Trick-taking games are when you are trying to win hands of cards. So typically you're playing one card, and if that card is the winning card for that hand, you are winning that hand, and winning that hand often matters in some way. Sometimes you don't want to win, but usually you want to win those hands or win a specific number of hands of cards. Ladder climbing often still has to do with winning a hand, but it's often about playing multiple cards over the course of a round to have the best, not hand, but to play the best cards that no one else can do better than. So there are games like kind of the game BS is a game like this where you're playing a certain number of cards onto the table. Say you're saying I'm playing two pairs, and if no one can beat two pairs, then you win that pile of cards on the table. That's an oversimplified approach to this. There are lots of different types of games in these genres. That's a general idea of how these two genres work. There are many trick-taking and ladder climbing games that I haven't played. A few that I haven't played that are highly recommended to me that I need to play. And Euchre I may have played, but Tichu, Time Chase, which someone recently recommended, I bought it, but I just haven't had the chance to play it yet. I look forward to playing it. Claim, Euchre, which I think I just can't remember it, so I don't know if I have played it, and Rook. Some honorable mentions are The Fox and the Forest Duet, Diamonds, Gorus Maximus, Tournament at Camelot, and like I mentioned, the game BS, where you're maybe bluffing as to whether or not you're putting down certain cards. Here is my top 10. So, and one of the reasons I'm making this list is that I've recently discovered that I like trick taking more than I thought, and I think one of the reasons I like it is because there's a lot more variety to this genre than I originally thought. At number 10, we have Custom Heroes, which is a great example of the variety this genre can offer. Custom Heroes has clear cards in it. And so in Custom Heroes, you're just trying to win a trick. You're trying to win the trick for the round. And at the end of a round, so you get your full hand of cards, you play a number of tricks. At the end of the round, you actually get to modify some of those cards. You get to slide in new cards into the sleeves in Custom Heroes and modify those cards for the rest of the game. With kind of the catch there being that those cards all get shuffled up. You aren't keeping those cards. You just are aware of them. So you're aware of how you've modified those cards. And you can kind of plan your strategy, or plan a little bit of strategy for the rest of the game around that progression, around how these cards are changing and what you're seeing from other cards that are changing around the table. I think it's just a really clever concept to have a trick-taking game with a sense of global progression where these cards are evolving over the course of the game. And Custom Heroes does that in a really interesting manner with these clear, sleevable cards. That's Custom Heroes number 10. At number 9, I have The Fox and the Forest. I've played both the Duet version, that's why I put it in the honorable mentions, but I've also played the competitive version. It's a two-player trick-taking game where there's a little bit of a tug-of-war track that's trying to incentivize you to win a certain number of tricks each round. And I think that's really clever. Or it's actually more about the value. It's been a while since I played it, but I think it's more about maybe the exact value of the trick that you're gaining. It's just a really, really tight game that gives you moments where you can feel really clever. If you're really paying attention to the cards. And I enjoyed playing it. It's been a long time since I played it, so I can't talk all that accurately about it. But I really like that it's a two-player specific trick-taking game with a little tug-of-war track on it that's pushing you towards winning tricks in different ways or having tricks of different net sums on them is my recollection of it. And number 8 is Spades, the classic trick-taking game Spades, where you play with a partner and you're trying to win a certain number of tricks with your partner itself. I don't typically gravitate towards partner-driven games, but Spades, I have enjoyed it. It is a lot of fun. It is nice to team up with someone. I think the downside of Spades is that you need exactly 4 players to play Spades, at least the version that I've played. And so it's a little bit of a downside, but if you have exactly 4 players, which often happens when you're playing board games, I think Spades can work really, really well to have that partnership feel to it. And number 7 so this is one that I don't have, but the Crew Mission Deep Sea. I'm going to talk about the other crew a little bit later on this list. I really enjoy what they did with the Crew Mission Deep Sea. It has a lot more flexibility in terms of the types of missions that you're trying to solve in the game. I think for some reason I really like the preset structure of the missions in the crew though, or the original The Crew, more than Mission Deep Sea. I do like the replayability of Deep Sea more. And I guess I should say what The Crew is. The Crew is a cooperative game. It is a cooperative trick-taking game, which I think is just brilliant, that you have a trick-taking game that is cooperative. Similar to the Vox and the Force Duet. That's also a cooperative trick-taking game for 2 players specifically. But in The Crew, I love this cooperative feel of working together to achieve certain tasks. So each player has a different task, and you're trying to help those players achieve those tasks through the cards that you play. It feels very cooperative and collaborative, and there is a limited information side to it. So you're not like fighting against an antagonistic AI. You are just trying to solve a puzzle together based on the limited information that you have. I'll talk more about The Crew in a minute and the number one thing that I love about The Crew, but this is where I put The Crew Mission Deep Sea on this list. And number 6, I have a very new trick-taking game to me, and that is Skull King. Skull King is in my favorite genre of trick-taking games, or ladder climbing games, and that is it ramps up. So over the course of a game of Skull King, the first hand, you're only getting 1 card to play, and you play that card, and you are stating how many tricks you will think you will win within that round. So in round 1, you're either going to stay 0 or 1. And then in round 2, you get 2 cards, and you shuffle all the cards back together. You get 2 cards. And again, you're saying, okay, I think I could win 0, 1, or 2. If you win a hand of cards in Skull King, or not if you win, if you guess correctly, if you guess the number of tricks correctly, and not only guessing, you kind of make it happen based on which cards you play. You have that information of cards in your hand. You get 20 points per correct guess. So if I said I'm going to win 2 tricks, and I actually did win 2 tricks, I would get 40 total points. Sometimes I confuse this with another game that I'll mention here, so hopefully I don't do that here. But if you lose a trick, or if you guess incorrectly, not if you lose a trick, if you guess incorrectly, you'll lose 10 points per number that you guessed incorrectly. Or maybe it's just you lose 10 points total. Let's see. I have to remember here. I think it's you lose 10 per trick that you guessed incorrectly. Which is fine. So you're gaining more than you're losing. And last, though, if you bid 0, so if you say you're going to win 0 tricks, this is the thing that I think I like the most about Skull King. You gain points equal to, I believe it's either 10 or 20 times the current round. I should have better prepared for this video by actually rereading the rules. But so it scales up, basically, this idea of scaling up. So yeah, I can't do it on the fly here. I'm not going to do it on the fly. But the number of points that you gain for bidding 0 scales up. So in like the 10th round, if you bid 0 and you somehow pull that off with 10 cards in your hand, you don't win any tricks, you'll gain a huge amount of points. It's either 10 times or it's 20 times, but it scales up to quite a few points. I really, really like that. There's also some unique characters in Skull King that can definitely add to the complexity of the game. And I can see if you play Skull King a lot, you'll really enjoy those unique characters. But I really enjoy this ramping element to it. And I really, really enjoy going for a 0 bid, a 0 bid late in the game and getting a bunch of points and jumping up. I really, really like that. So that's Skull King at number 6. Stumbled through that one a bit, but we'll move on to Scout. Scout is, I think, the first ladder climbing game on this list. Yeah, so in Scout, it does a lot of clever things, but the core idea is that you are trying to play the best set of cards in the middle of the table. And on your turn, you have a choice. You can either play cards or you can scout. And the reason scouting is really important is that you can only play cards in the order in which they appear in your hand. And so if I have a 7, 8, 9 in my hand, but there's a 1 wedged in between that 7 and that 8 and that 9, instead of that being a 7, 8, 9 straight, that is just an 8, 9 straight, a very short straight. And so one of the things that I'm trying to do is get that 1 out of my hand or insert a card from my hand, from the pool of cards into my hand, and changing up the order of the cards in that way, or inserting it right in there, or maybe gaining a 7 and inserting that before the 8, so I now have a 7, 8, 9. I think that's really, really clever, that you cannot rearrange your hand, but you can remove cards from your hand as you play them, or add a card to your hand through the scout mechanism in the game. As you try to basically play a hand that no one else can beat, and then you win that trick. It's a really, really clever game, really simple to play, But I love this mechanism that you can't change the order of cards in your hand, and yet you have this choice to scout and then change the shape of your hand. That is Scout, number 5. And number 4 is the game that I think opened up trick-taking beyond what I really knew it could be, and that is Brian Boru. This is a game where it's an area control game where you are trying to gain control over different locations on the board. And the way that you do that is on your turn, you say, okay, this is the location we're going to be fighting over this turn. And so you declare it, you declare it, and to do the fight, to do the battle, essentially, this is essentially a combat mechanism. You play a trick of cards. And so you choose one card from your hand, and you play that card down on the table. And if you win that trick, and players don't have to play on suit in Brian Boru for a reason that I'll mention in a second, but if you win that trick, or whoever wins that trick, they gain control of that location. Or they put a token there, at least, for temporary control. The other thing that this does really well, though, so I really like this trick-taking as a combat mechanism. Very cool there. The second thing that it does is that each of the cards that you're playing has a benefit at the top that says if you win the trick if you win a trick with this card, you gain this benefit. But at the bottom of the card is also a benefit that you gain if you lose the trick. And so no matter what happens, win or lose the trick, because you have to participate in every trick, even if you don't want to win a certain location, you are getting a benefit. And so you're constantly choosing. The choice is even not do I want which card am I going to play, but it's do I want to win or lose this battle, and if I don't want to win it, which card do I really want the losing benefit from, and because I'm getting rid of that card, which card do I not want the winning benefit from later? I think this is really, really clever. It's even a little bit difficult to describe here. I have a video about it where I actually have the game and I can show you some photos of it. But I love the idea of getting something no matter what whenever you participate in a trick. You're either winning and gaining a benefit on the card and on the board, or you're losing and gaining that bottom benefit. Brian Boru, really, really clever take on trick-taking. I want to emphasize, I love the idea of trick-taking as a combat mechanism where everyone's participating. Yeah, really cool. And number 3 is the game that I played the most in college of any game, I think, and that is Hearts. We played a lot of Hearts in college. Hearts is kind of a classic trick-taking game where you are trying not to take hearts, basically. Hearts are the cards that you don't want, unless you decide to shoot the moon. And this is the thing that I love the most about Hearts, that there are circumstances in Hearts, and the way we played, I think there are different variants on it, but I believe at the beginning of each round, you pass a few cards. I don't even remember how many cards that we passed in the way that we played. I think it was 2. Might have been 3. You pass 2 or 3 cards to another player. So you give that player a little bit of a signal of whether or not you are trying to win tricks, or if you were trying and win hearts, or if you were trying not to. But Shoot the Moon is a mechanism. It's one of these like almost instant win mechanisms where basically it's a catch-up mechanism where you can really catch up if you shoot the moon and you take all of the hearts. So you have a bunch of players around the table who are trying to actively not take hearts, and there you are actually trying to take hearts. And once players see that you're trying to do that, they might want you to take all but one of the hearts so that you get really, really close. You lose a bunch of points while they're winning all these hands of cards. But you don't quite do it because it only matters if you take all of the hearts, and then you get a ton of points. I think it's 100 points that you gain if you take all the hearts. But I love that option. I love the tension that it provides. I love the decision space that it provides, and that it's always out there. That it's not just by default good not to take tricks or to not take tricks. That because you're trying not to win tricks in hearts, but that there's this option where you can just try to take all the hearts and try to shoot the moon. I love that about Hearts, and that's why it's my number 3. I need to play it again. It's been a long time since I played Hearts. And number 2 on the list, I have a game that is very similar to Skull King in the way it ramps up, but it's a little simpler of a game, and that is Wizard. I really, really love Wizard. It's also just a really beautiful production. Skull King is too, but Wizard comes with coins, metal coins, in this nice little game. Nice little card game that comes with metal coins. But in Wizard, I love the ramping mechanism in this game, where you start with one card in your hand. You play that card. You are bidding to decide how many tricks do I think I will win this hand, and then you do it again. You do it at 2, then 3. You can go up, depending on player count. You can go up pretty high. You can go up to 20 apparently. depending on 3 players. So it says for 3 players, you can play somewhere in this range. You can decide how far do we want to go for a 3-player game. And the reason I really, really like this, not just because of the feeling of progression of the game, you're not really progressing, but it feels that way. It feels like you're doing more and more stuff throughout the game. But the number one reason I like it is that it's very welcoming to new players and to players who haven't played Wizard in a while, because the stakes are very low in the first round. You're kind of getting a feel for since you have to declare how many tricks you think you can win, rather than starting you out with 5 cards and saying, hey, how many do you think you'll win this turn, and having that have a huge impact on the game, you start with just 1, and your choice is only 0 or 1. Like that isn't a big decision space there. It's either 0 or 1. And then it ramps up a little bit more, goes to that 2. And so it just onboards players into the game really, really easily. Because the stakes start out very low as you try to grasp how much is this worth. It's kind of like an auction game where you start out with very low auction stakes early on in the game, and those stakes raise up throughout the game. But yeah, I love that ramping element of Wizard, and I like the simplicity of Wizard. I think I will eventually come around to really, really love Skulking. I do really enjoy this game, but you need several reference cards in the game if you don't know it to figure out which card beats another card. Whereas in Wizard, it's much simpler. You have the cards. They're just numerical cards, and you have a Wizard card that can beat anything, and you have Joker cards, which means that you cannot win that trick. You can't win with the Joker, whatever they're called. This is the German version, so I don't know officially what it's called. But yeah, I like the simplicity of Wizard added to that ramping mechanism. I do wish. I mean, I think the one thing about Skulking that I wish were in Wizard was that nil bid ramping up throughout the game. I really, really like that in Skulking. Last, we have my favorite, and this is the crew, the original crew, the quest for Planet 9. And again, it comes down to the ramping mechanism here. This isn't a bidding game. You aren't bidding in the crew. Rather, you're giving different tasks to different players and cooperating to try to accomplish those tasks and decide which player gets which task even as you ramp up. But I love how the missions ramp up from game to game. And I love that they're preset. I like that they decided this is the easiest mission, and you're going to play this first. So you start with the crew, and it's not even a matter of hand size. So you always start out with the same number of hands in the crew, based on player count. Rather, it's a matter of how difficult is the mission itself. So here's the mission book. You start out with mission 1 here. It's very simple. It's just giving you one little task card that you need to accomplish, and then you do 2 task cards, and then what do you do here? You do 2 task cards, and they have to be in a certain order. You have to accomplish one of those tasks first, and then the second task. So I really like that it's a ramping game, a ramping trick-taking game, but the ramping isn't about the number of cards in your hand. It's about the difficulty and so difficulty / number of tasks that you need to complete, because the tasks do get more and more complex, and you get more and more tasks as you approach the end of the game. And there are 50 of these missions. And I also really like that whenever you accomplish one of those tasks, the round ends right away. So you don't have to necessarily play out the whole round. You just play until you accomplish that one task, and then you've completed mission 1, and you move on to mission 2. I always have this feeling of, let's play one more game of the crew. Let's do one more. We can do this. Let's do one more. So you can see a pattern here. I really love this ramping mechanism in these games, whether it's missions and tasks in a cooperative game, or if it's the number of cards in your hand in Wizard or Skull King. That to me feels really, really good in these trick-taking games. And it's really, while I'm not designing a trick-taking game, I might someday. Like, I never thought that I would think about that, because I think, there's so many trick-taking games out there. But these games have really opened my eyes to how satisfying and joyful a trick-taking game can be. And all of these are very simple to teach. I would say the most complex one to teach on here is Brian Boru, but even that one isn't that complicated. But they're very easy to teach, and players are constantly involved in these trick-taking games. So that's one of the things about these games. You're not ever opting out of a turn. You're always actively participating on your turn, and turns are fast. You're just playing a card, or you're playing a couple cards in a ladder climbing game. So I love how the player involvement works in these games. Very little downtime. Yeah, so yeah, that's my list of favorite trick-taking games. I'm sure there'll be people watching this who are far more experienced in trick-taking games, and I love your recommendations, especially knowing that I like this element of ramping up through the different methods that I mentioned here. Let me know other trick-taking games that do that in interesting ways, because I'd love to try them. All right, yeah, let me know in the comments below. I look forward to talking about trick-taking games with you there. Take care.